Well, now, because Lord forbid any problems have happened before. Don't know what that was caused by. Probably caused by me having to unplug and replug. So I haven't even described that. So, I bought several things. One of them I've already installed. And in fear of fucking with the webcam setup, I can't show it to you directly. But it's already on X. I bought 2 new on-brand right angle plugs. Both of them are pink. I rewired the entire underside of the desk and reran the wires in such a way where all of the switches are out of the space of my feet. So, even though it never happens, never again is there going to be something that'll get triggered off and on by accidentally hitting the reset off switch on the surge protectors. I also rearranged my desk. Now, the phone is on my desk. Which means occasionally whenever somebody calls the place, I will probably have to deafen and mute more often than I actually did before. This means that instead of it being on the left side, which is closer to the microphone, it's now towards me. Another thing, I already showed you this. I also bought a proper clothes hamper. This one rolls and has wheels. So I bring it through the house. I ain't gotta lug it every goddamn where. And it latches and folds and flips over. And I obviously bought the replacement controller. Haven't hooked it in yet. It seems that when they were putting this one on the shelf, that whoever was putting it on the shelf cut it open slightly. But everything's in there, including the wires. Hasn't been touched. So I have to figure out anything wrong with that. So that I have that. That means that I can possibly open my Epic controller so I can attempt to fix any of the stick drift issues and problems. And then I figured out a solution for putting away things like delicates and socks. Basically, I took the fabric mesh wire that's supposed to work on something else and hung it up on a hanger, because I didn't have any other method to use it for. So, while we're talking, I'm doing my laundry. Namely because I need to see if I can fit both of these cardboard boxes that I've been using as hampers for my clothes. Because now I properly have a dirty and clean clothes hamper that isn't me using a half-broken wireframe one and these leftover delivery boxes. Cool? Savvy? Everyone's up to date? Wonderful. Great. Now, let's talk really quick about what just happened there. Why didn't anybody just say what the problem was until it had to be like PipCat123 that said it? Sometimes it helps to just say what the problem is. I'm not reading through lines. I'm going to think that they're jokes, and without context, I'm going to ignore them. If anyone to be blamed for this, truly we should be blaming Pip. It's hard to take people serious, because people have a penchant of not giving context. And I am not one for the TikTok. You are here for the funny bit. You are still part of the problem, Marcus! Marcus! No, Rozzy. Suffice to say, if the content creator does not have the context to what you're saying, while multiple people are cheating at the same time, the more likely suspicion is that there's a problem that they don't know. Because I don't know what I sound like. I do not have a VoiceBox app that talks back with my audio at the same time. Even though most of my microphones are dialed for it, it is an additional tool that has to be used with a program. The most easy form of feedback is the chat. So I rely on the chat, to be honest. But you see, therein lies the problem. Some people like to stir the pot. Not everyone. But it's happened more enough that because there have been people who have stirred the pot to troll me, that I've just started ignoring when people do it, because I have to assume that if it's actually a serious problem, a trusted figure will speak up and say, no, that's not the thing that they're talking about, Carl. They're talking about this. Truthfully, a tragedy of the spheres. Anyways, it's not that big of a deal. Once we identified what the problem was, it was simple enough to fix it. It's just a pet peeve to me. Besides that, other things that I purchased. I have the entire Thief trilogy, because there is no such thing as Thief 4. It's not real and it cannot hurt you. I own the entirety of the franchise now, so that content can be secured for future purposes. I also was able to pick up a PC edition of Blood Omen 1 for the Legacy of Kain. So now I own the entirety of the Legacy of Kain franchise. Even though it is on GOG, it is possible to link your GOG file to your Steam library so that you can rename the file what it needs to be named alongside the picture. So it runs 100%. Runs fine, does all the stuff, and it's also secure for future content. I also, against my better judgment, but it was on sale, so it's not that big of a deal, but it's causing me more of a headache than I'd like. I also bought a Spore collection. The God game made by Maxor. The one that's ran by EA. There are two versions of this game, I have learned. One version is the version that exists on Sporepedia. The other version is the version that was sold by CD and Disc. The CD and Disc version was the version that was discontinued, but the online version that still runs on Origin and Steam and GOG has an extremely annoying and complex process. No, I intend on playing these games. There's an entire list, Rossi. In fact, I believe you were here when I put this list together. Right here. I put them in a note file, and I went over this note file on camera like 3 to 4 days ago. You were here, and Horror was here, Bloody was here. All of these things are getting played, as well as all this other content that I have editing that I'm working on is coming out, which included that I needed to do this. I could not continue playing Expedition 33 until I got a better controller. Or rather, another controller, because my first controller was breaking, and this secondary piece of shit that was being used tied over, it's over here where I left it. This piece of shit right here started bugging after I tried to change some profile settings inside of Steam's Big Picture mode to make sure it was working properly. Welcome, Callum. It's Slashers Keep OST, the B-sides. So, all this stuff is going to happen within August to October. I don't know if you remember that I put it there, but I talked about it on camera in detail and went through the list in my backlog. Now, some of those games on that list are JRPGs, which means, by my own rules, I cannot move on to them until I finish Expedition 33. We originally purchased Expedition 33 as a game to be played on camera with the community, because we crowdfunded it and we raised it. The same way that people chose to give me the money to play Doom the Dark Ages. Doom the Dark Ages was not intended to be played on camera, but I still can anyways. But I can't really finish working on one game if I pick up another one and try playing that without finishing that game in the first place. So that brings us to, I needed to get XYZ in order to do ABC. And now that I've got XYZ and ABC, we now set up the process starting from 1, 2, and 3. Simple. So if anybody ever offers me a question like, hey, single player Carl, do you never intend on playing X game? The answer I will end up giving you is probably the same thing I've given to other people who have come and gone because they were just looking for other people to play the game with them, which is, when I have the time to, and when I sit down to do it, I will be able to do X, Y, and Z. So, for example, in August, there is going to be an update on Helldivers 2, and there's going to be an update on Path of Exile 2. For both of these games, they will be something I will be focusing on, because I have written content to premiere and to work on. Most of you are aware of this content, but assuming that this is your first time on the stream, and or it's your first time coming back in a while, there is an entire Obsidian file that is dedicated to the living document itself, and this document has gotten very thick and very condensed and very explicit as I write down more and more things that need to be worked on, or need to be explained. or need to have content made about it. Such as, there's an entire part of the living document that lives just to documentate the progression and the failures and lack thereof of the last mission order. There's a lot of notes here. More than likely, this will be a Warframe autistically explained background for the content of the video, because this was an overall process that was annoying as fuck to watch, despite the fact that our game community is supposed to be capable of handling it. There are other parts of the document that exist, namely all the parts that are encouraged from content creators and supporters. People like Jade, people like Yan, people like any of the individuals I've been meeting and talking to inside of the Helldivers 2 Discord, who I've made content for in video format, demonstrating a concept. Questions from players, using guide information directly taken from the wikis. Examples of demonstration of concepts, even documentation captured live from in-game. All of these things and more are getting covered and will be inside of the content. So, if you're not showing up to those live streams, or rather, whenever I'm playing Helldivers 2 on what I call a Hell Watch, where I spend 4 to 8 hours playing Helldivers 2 and interacting with other people, if you just tune out on those streams, you're missing the events that are going to be documented in the live stream and in the video guide series. There's also other pieces of content that are coming out on that list of information. An example of which happens to be this up here. Technically, it's zoomed out because I have this one filter on it. 1 second. So right here, where it says DST TBD, this is Don't Starve Together, the Base Boy series. I've been feeding episodes of this to Callum to work on as editing, while he's also been working on edits of Carl at Home streams to condense the information that some of you have been missing, either because you are at work, you can't watch them in totality, or you gotta go to sleep at night, so you to keep up on what has been covered. Because outside of the Versus chats that we have now returned to, accounting for the one we did the other day, which was actually able to afford this, thanks EXO, for the $125 donated, as well as everybody else's humble donations and humble payments for my sanity, I've been able to buy some of these things and work out some of these things and plan for some of these things because of your support. So, for that Helldivers 2 guide, I'm currently in talks with Lenore about designing a patch specifically for that content, so that when I talk about material and concepts, I have an entire little faction, we call ourselves, namely called the Drop Jockeys. I've demonstrated some sample ideas of what it looks like inside the Discord. So if you're interested in looking at that, go to the Relaxation Lounge and simply look at that material. It's there for your early consumption. And that's just the mock-ups. The official drops that she and I will be working on as we create 2 different versions that will be purchasable in the future, or at the very least for those that are Etsy smart, will be able to create themselves as the official patch design that she and I will have worked on. More than likely she'll be able to sell it herself, because she and I will both have equal rights for digital distribution and purchasing. She'll also be producing art to go along with it. As well as, more than likely, I'm going to need people's help demonstrating certain things, because there's no way I can be able to do a guide series live on air with randoms. It's not going to be possible. So I guess I can talk a bit about the Base Boys. So, for those that haven't been watching it, or you saw it and you skipped it because you didn't know what you were looking at, there's a piece of content on the channel called The Base Boys Quickie, Jade Funky's Jungle Juice Wedding Jamboree. One of the latest posted videos, yes.
We were at the comfort of so there was no worry about being like too belligerent and shit like that. And even then, I'm not really much of a belligerent drunk. I'm more like it's.
So this video right here, where I am talking to a couple of friends, or rather a handful of friends. It's a rotating list of people. Right now, the people who are involved in this series are different than the people who are involved in the other series that will be coming up. Because whenever I seek to do these things, I'm going to ask people, do you have the time and availability to do this? And if they give me a yes, they're going to be filming and taping these things within a certain time frame. Some will be live, some will not be live. But the entire goal of it is we sit down with an intended goal to achieve something. Inside of Don't Starve Together, it is the ability to achieve defeating both the Celestial Champion, the Cryptic Founder content that is up to date with the last part of Hostile Takeover, as well as the Shadow Boss of the Ancient Fieldweaver. And along the way, within all of the runs that encapsulate this content, that it creates a multiplayer, a survival multiplayer SMP world situation, similar to all forms of Minecraft SMPs that you've seen over the years. And in the middle, to save for time, because it's not just going to be gameplay, we will shitpost and talk to each other about things that we do in our days, or funny stories. One of which happens to be this example of a funny story. Basically, if you are familiar with old school RuneScape Snowflake content, such as Gridlocked, McTile, Swampletics, and the like, you will know exactly what kind of content we're doing here. This is content that I've tried to broach before, but ultimately as a community we could not be able to do it for things such as community group gaming, because there's just not a lot of time for people in the day to be able to do this randomly, for whatever reason we want to go up with, as well as a combined mistake on my own for having approached it the wrong way. This content is being worked on so that there's at least 1 to 2 videos that should be coming out within a time frame of 2 a month, maybe 3 if Callum were to push it, or if I were to push it specifically to get as much content as possible. Because we record these, and I have a very large conjunction of them that should be coming out over time. All of this content is designed to give you something else other than normal dumb shit to look at and to listen to. So, whenever the news ends up being slow, for example, and there's news stories that I don't want to talk about and I don't want to cover, I will produce content in the interim, funny, jokey, different than just Carl gets on microphone and yaps at camera, with people whom I'm hanging out with. So for myself and Jay, it is the broadcast content that we do for things like Interview the Vampire, of which that series has now concluded, at least for Season 2, for our reactions. So if you haven't watched those, please go watch Season 1 and Season 2 of our reactions, because more than likely, we're going to be forced to watch Season 3, and in the interim, we might even end up having to watch some more garbage content, just because of how garbage that content is. The same thing with myself and my appearances with the Long Boys, covering anything that Jay particularly has. I also have some content of just her and myself alone, watching films together as a friend, as friends. And the funny jokes we tell each other while watching movies. Hence why on this document file, that particular content is called, if I can find my shit.
I just had it up here. What did I do with it?
Hello Horror. That's why the particular content there is called specifically Editing Niggas at the Movies with Jay. So between that, there should be 5 episodes of that should be coming out within the time period of late August, hopefully. And then movie edits that I'm editing myself, that I'm dropping alongside all of the other edited content that I have. I have 4 videos slotted that need to come out within 1 to 2 weeks. Some were videos that should have come out months ago, but I simply put on the back burner and put out something else alongside the TikTok things that I've been putting out. So whenever I've been putting out a video that is a long form edit of a piece of content that I was researching and working on that I didn't want to put out as Carl at Home content, and I didn't want to put out as a versus chat, I put out specifically as an edited video. There's also been some here and there pieces of content in a Memphis Wave style that I just labeled as Carl Yaps. So whenever there's a piece of content that's happening, like, say, the opinion around people like Smash GT and his inability to take accountability for being a fucking normie who doesn't want to admit that he's out of his depth, I will just simply put that shit up there and splatter that whenever I wish. Rather than the edited vibe content, such as, I don't know if you want to call it a series, but the Adi Shankar Tourist series. For the sake of brevity and bringing them out faster, so that I don't do a lot of editing and a lot of research to get the material to put on camera, various forms of content on various website sources for you to be entertained with in the interim. That I, again, beg you, please go watch it. Because something that we've learned about YouTube's current algorithm system is that the algorithm system actually does not function the way a normal system should. Obviously. But it's even worse than it was before. What we learned is that the content source does not allow you to find out about content that is not being watched, commented, liked, and shared because they believe that that's dead content. So, whenever I put out content, please like it, please watch it, please share it, please comment on it, because it helps the channel. And that helps me be able to figure out what exactly it is that people are interested in. The same way with people posting inside of the Printing Press Express. Whenever there is a news topic that comes up, I rely on the knowledge of the crowds. But assuming that nobody says anything, that means I have to go looking myself. And when there's like 50 topics being said at the same time, and maybe like 25 of them are the same topic, just from two different angles, I try to condense down for what's important, while also getting my normal life stuff done and dealt with. So yesterday, while I was doing said shopping, Zillion was invited to a birthday party, and started to do some paperwork, to work on getting things like her passports, and a bunch of other liaison problems that needed to be dealt with, as well as me doing all this shopping for all this extra shit that I needed to buy, so I could have a functional system of just dealing with my own laundry as well as other problems in the house. Whenever somebody hits me up in my DMs or hits me up and joins the Discord and says, "Hey, single player Carl, are you gonna look into X topic about this lolcow that I personally don't like?" And I say to them, "That's really interesting, but I'm kind of busy with this focus right now. Do you mind making a post about this so that I can document this and look into it?" And I get told, "Bro, why don't you just look into the thing that I told you to do?" It has become very obvious within the last X amount of months, to me at least, that I have to explain the reason why I don't look into anything without a link. The obvious reason being I like having integrity, and I don't like wasting my time on things I don't think are important. Like right now, VTuber news. The fact that Legal Mindset is drinking and eating up the viewer base and the fan base that Nick Fajita could have been able to pivot into if he decided he didn't want to play with coke and be a swinger is not important to dig into because people want to see somebody make fun of him being a druggie. That saga has already long since come and gone. He's gotten his sentencing. He's going to jail for a year. He has a year to put his fucking affairs into order. And maybe when he comes out, he'll finally be on the straight and narrow. And him and Kayla will know what the fuck they need to do with them with their lives. That's not important. It is important to pay attention to the VTuber news. And to pay attention to the takes amongst people like myself, the Gator Gamer, Azahara, and so on. Because these Sojo situation unironically directly affects the field. Because there's so many people who are involved. The same thing with the Cinder shit. The same thing with the V-Shiggy stuff. The V-tweeters, the NVTubers. That stuff is important. When I get like 100 or so people who hit up my DMs and won't like actually look at my rules, and believe that money is supposed to make me move faster when they don't actually pay into anything and support anything, and I know because I can see the metrics, and like people say things with their mouths, but they're not saying things with their hands and they're with wallets. It does not entice me to, I don't know, blow up my career because somebody wants me to be their personal attack hornet. I'm not doing that. I've said that before, I'll say it again, I'll keep repeating it as necessary as I need to for whomever needs to hear it, because it's getting ridiculous. It just is what it is. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in being a contingency of Kiwi Farms. It's dumb. It's stupid. It's lazy. Because right now, looking at the Shoujo situation, there is a serious fact that Gunrun is going to go to jail and is going to go to prison for wire fraud, amongst multiple things. And none of his NDAs are enforceable because he's going to be disiluding the company as a whole. And the VTubers in question were never employees, but instead were contractors. So similar to a contractor working with a company inside of wrestling, such as the WWE, New World Japan, TNA, AEW, or any other promotion, these contractors now have the ability to talk about how, oh yeah, back when that was happening to me, my head of my company told me I deserved to be bullied, I deserved to be harassed, that I was a fucking problem, and that it was good that people were attacking me for reasons that I couldn't defend myself for. That's wild. Add into that the amount of VTubers that at these companies couldn't speak up because they felt that if they said something they would never see the money that they were promised, that they worked tirelessly for. There is an actual bit of this that this can lead to some type of recidivism and some healing and growth, just in terms of broadcasting, if not for the streamer world audience. However, there are more people who are interested in shit that is not important, that are like bringing up the fucking majority of their drama attention to whose boyfriend fucked who, which VTubers got pregnant behind the camera. And that shit matters nothing to me. And yes, Swidwin, it is that bad. Effectively, his statement was, I kept taking deals and money because I thought the money would never run out. And now that the money's running out, and my company and myself are getting blown over and raked over on the coals, because all of the VTubers are not going to be able to be silenced by my bullshit NDAs, I'm going to be victimized by that, and so I'm just going to disappear and fade into the background. I'm going to file bankruptcy and I'm going to ride off into the sunset. Except that, because he admitted this, several levels of litigation are going to happen. Because he committed charity fraud, on top of the fraud in general. Taking loans to try and pay back debts of money in which he is 500,000 plus in the hole to several talents, while at the same time saying, oh, I didn't know that money was supposed to be for charity. I didn't know. Thus pulling a Creator Clash 3, despite being physically seen at the event, holding the pole and the camera of the talent who was there for the event for charity. There are lies, damned lies, and statistics. That one was a case example of, bro, you are cooking yourself. So while the majority of the normie world are on TikTok looking at content saying, bro, get your funky butt in that tub, bitch. 10, 20, 20, because they're enjoying the current release of the newest album from Tyler, the Creator. God, please let Leadhead decide to say something stupid about this album. Please, God, do something really funny. While the majority of the internet and the normies are looking at something like Don't Tap the Glass, over on TikTok, you've got women crying, angry about the tea spill. And for that, I already dropped those shorts before I went live today. Granted, I probably dropped them like an hour before I went live. So for you to have watched both means you would have had to notice them on the alert tracker inside the server. But they're there. uploaded them to TikTok, uploaded them to YouTube Shorts, uploaded it to X. That situation in and of itself pisses me off something actually fierce, in a way that I wish that it wasn't. Because you see, the tea spill is the direct result of women not listening to men and actively trying to push for something that wasn't happening on the platforms because they thought that they were smarter than the average bear. Effectively, for some people, if you're somehow out of this loop, there is a gay man that made the application. He designed tea, the original name of the application, as an answer to his mother constantly tweeting at and DMing random male strangers that were abusers, criminals, felons, and scammers on the internet. The logic was, I don't want my mom getting hurt, so I want to make an app where she and other women have the ability to tell people ahead of time, don't date John from Wisconsin. He's a sexual abuser who's into rape play. Don't date Sean from Illinois. That man will tie you up in shibari and leave you exhausted and panting for breath and air, telling you it puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the cock again. And so on, and so on. An application specifically designed to allow women to basically, by rule and fiat of the longhouse of society, tell other women about the dangers of men. That's the original idea. That in practice, and even in prognostication, is not what they said they wanted to do with it. The sad thing about the application is what happened. But here's the timeline of how it actually proceeded. Back in the earliest part of the year, there was a report about the male loneliness epidemic. Women chose to say the men are struggling in the dating scene. And women are also struggling because of those lazy ass, bum ass, dirty ass men in the dating scene. The bar is in hell. My response to this was that the reason the bar is in hell is because you women are demons. And these men are suffering because they're being tortured. Then, the next update of this was the busted and chopped man epidemic, which happened in waves. In its totality, it happened over the course of 6 months. But the argument started with the pop star that likes to dye her hair green. Her name's slipping my mind. But it started with her clip saying, if you give an ugly man a chance, he will think that he is the shit and he will attempt to rule the world. Women jumped onto that notion and said, yeah, these dusties, these uggos, these medium ugly men, they think they're all that. We need to do something about it. And they did what they usually do on microblogging websites, and they started rumor-milling and gossiping about men. Now, I went over, briefly, on a broadcast, about some of the biggest known figures over time on TikTok that basically got shamed into non-existence. Turtleneck Evo, Michelle Hartsme, forgetting her goddamn name, Diextory, White Savannah, the girl who tried desperately to dress like she was a Temu edition of the WWE superstar, Rhea Ripley. They just disappeared one day Because what started happening was that these women got themselves involved with men or situations where people got tired of seeing and hearing them. For one of my pinned comments on TikTok is my breakdown of explaining how people got sick and tired of women trying to use the platform as a way to build an audience off of men that would be addicted and or simping for them. Then, what started happening was it needed to be a conversation between women and the men on the app. Every time there would be a trend, there'd be a tragedy, there'd be a problem, women would say, and that's why men are trash. And the men would come back with evidence saying, so why are you blaming all men for something that one guy is doing? The best case example of this was the Wade Wilson situation. Convicted felon and assaulter of women by the name of Wade Wilson, named the exact same as the Deadpool character, face tattoos, skull shit and all, is getting simped after by a bunch of women because, oh my god, he looks so attractive. Come to find out, women were texting him and mailing him in droves. And, per the legal notice standard, all of that information and communication is public to the world. Because it's under a request draft. You can submit a tool that allows you to look at what those women were sending him. And it was lurid. The nice word is lurid. The mean way to describe it is you had women dripping like Niagara Falls, begging to get torn apart and destroyed by this convict. Then it proceeded to the next stage. The stage after the male loneliness epidemic was the male loser epidemic. Actually, these men aren't just having loneliness because the world gave them hardships. What's so hard about being a man? The reason these guys are having a hard time in the dating market is because they're losers. They don't have anything to offer a woman. They bring nothing to the table. Baby, honey, I am the table. What do I need a man for? And as we are fans of HOMAF here, it is, in fact, an exacerbation of HOMAF. Women say, I don't have to bring anything to the table. I am the table. Men, in general, both in their spheres of influences and where they come from, say, actually, if you have nothing to offer me, I have nothing to give you, because I want reciprocation. Women say, you don't need to give me reciprocation. You just need to open your wallet and pay for it, Dusty. What are you, a loser? What are you, a limp? Well, heck, all the out men are just so goddamn soft and weak. Who's gonna be the men? Women out here doing everything. What do we need a man for? Which then would lead to more men going their own way. Granted, realistically, these men are not incels. They're also not losers. They're just men choosing to be to themselves. Whether they actually are just celibate, or they're abstaining from sex, or they're just not dating. These women shamed men for the audacity of saying, no, I don't want to date you because you're toxic. Then, this led to the argumentation of the chopped man era. No longer were we just dusties. No longer were we just ugly. No longer were we just losers. We're chopped. The battle of the mids, constantly telling men who arguably could be a 5 or a 6 from the position of a -2 to 3, but tell us we could do so much better as a man because I would be so pretty and attractive as a man. You guys have no idea how fucked you are. You're so busted. You're so dirty. I am on the side of the women that are against the chopped men because none of you are interesting or attractive. Where are all the good men at? The obvious reality being that all of the, quote, good men see these women and they have options. The fuck does a 10 out of 10 have to do to get with a 3 out of 10? Why would he pick you? He can have a 10 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10 because he has options. They turn to men like me and say, you don't have room to speak single player, Carl. You don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I do, because I see what you say. because I move in your circles. I, at the end of the day, am a bisexual man. I see what the men and women are saying collectively. Marcus knows what I'm talking about. We know how women think and behave, because we hear them. More often than not, we're probably the shoulder that the women are crying on. Period. This, in its totality, doesn't even explain the fact that once the T-App entered into the scene, effectively the conversation moved from men, I'm so tired and sick of them talking back to us on the platform. Ooh, I can't stand that John Buchanan with his muscles and shit coming onto a post where I wanted to make fun of Gusties like Carl, and both him and Carl and Papi Capone and a bunch of other people across the platforms. Single player Carl and Jay Longbone and Mahler and his quote incel Nazis of EFAP and that other friend of his that looks just like Carl. They were talking about Poe, but they didn't know what Poe's name was. I just hate that all these guys have the ability to talk back to us, and they're getting likes for doing it. Homax making career opportunities off of us doing it. What we need to do, girls, is we need to find a platform of our own to talk about these men for protection. We need to make it so that only women can talk, so there's no longer any men able to enter in the conversation and stop us from doing what we want to do. Framing it as, we need to make sure that men can't access it, so that men can't abuse it and take advantage of it. But in reality, what we found is that, no, it wasn't men being talked about for being men that would do things like spread around STDs willingly, thus giving people death sentences by infecting them with HIV positive strains of the human papillomavirus. Instead, it was, man, I went to the fucking Chick-fil-A at College Park and I saw Twan there, and Twan was just ugly as hell. I think he's gay and shit. Yeah, sis, I heard he was gay too. I heard he sucked 11 dicks in jail when he went away on patrol. Twan gets onto the app, he sees himself getting talked about, and he says things such as, "You dusty, dirty bitches! I'm not gay! I've never been gay! I just don't talk to y'all! You know why I don't talk to y'all? It's because I got told by every single motherfucker at College Park that you already been cracked! And you call me gay because I stay to myself, I do my job, and I don't entertain a conversation with y'all? Man, fuck y'all!" That is the majority of the conversation that was had about the T-App and the people who were on it. Then, of course, we get to the final chapter, which is what happened within the last 5 days. The application board upon which the content was made. Why are Zulian's pants in my laundry? Anyways, the information conflicts that became obvious realized that the application was not protected and safe. In reality, what became obvious very quickly is that the gay CEO did not privatize the SLQ dump of all of the photos and government IDs and geolocation assigned to the accounts of the users. So if you were a user of the T-App and you signed up and you gave them something similar to what our bot in the server gives for the approval role, a selfie and your government ID, rather than how for my bot it goes to a secure backend created by the authors that only ever checks the information, checking for the 18 plus, and then stores it in an encrypted hash that is accessible to the users of that particular framework. His backend was posted as an open image bucket with the relevant metadata associated to it. There was no hack of the T-App. It was public information where hacking the database was accessing the public bucket. So the women gossiping about Dumel and Kyle and Quan and Pookie and Ray Ray suddenly realized, oh no, my government ID and the geolocation assigned to my cell phone has exposed me. Now, what does that look like? By the numbers, chat. Take a bright-eyed guess. What do you think it looks like? I'm going to show you what it looks like. I want you to guess. What do you think that number looks like on a large enough scale? Per capita. What it looks like, chat, is it looks like this. That's just the USA. And this is just the mainland. This doesn't even have Hawaii and Alaska. Have I ever told you of Darth Ashley Madison, the lustful? This is worse than the Ashley Madison leaks. This is worse than the Ashley Madison leaks. Because at least with the Ashley Madison leaks, they were lied to and told, oh no, your information is safe. And then the hackers had to expose it and say, no it ain't. These women and their information and details were public. Every single dot is a woman who posted to that application. So, what do those women look like, chat? What do the users of the T app look like? You will not be surprised by what you're about to see. I don't know, chat. I'm seeing a lot of glasses and pale women. Seeing a lot of hair color. I'm seeing a lot of up-close frames. It's almost like it was always projection. And, even though I can't seem to get access to it, there's a different level of petty that some people decided they wanted to get to. That level of pettiness came about because it wasn't just enough to see the women. No. You see, chat, for these women, there are some that are being compared against the others. So, for every woman who looked like this, and every woman who looked like this, and every woman who looked like this, there is an app, or there is an outpost, an index, that I feel was being guarded like Fort fucking Knox, because it doesn't work on my computer. Not for any connection I tried to connect to. That they started comparing the data dumps of the people in question. So, as was reported, the supposed site was called T-Spill. It's in Dreamscale, which is why the fucking filter has a problem looking through it. Click on the void that you would rather prefer. Is she uglier or is she uglier? And there was in fact leaderboards and ratings. Something that became very obvious is the top 50 were like the e-girls that I just showed here. Anna Kachakian, Dasha Eats, Taylor Swift 13. So, you had Taylor Swift on the app. You had e-girls on the app. And what was very obvious as you started looking at the numbers and the rates of the top 50 and the negative bottom 50 You had attractive women that clearly were using this as a way to get social dominance. The green screen's fucking with everything, so I'm going to turn the green screen feature off real quick. You had attractive women on the top of the ratings, and then the bottom ratings. If I say it, chat, I will go to jail. Chat, if I say it, I will go to jail. If I say it, chat, I will go to jail. If I say it, I will be locked up. I will go to jail. If I say it, chat, I will be locked up and I will go to jail. Now, understand, I'm not condoning this. I'm saying I understand. Because every single step of the way, men, collectively, no matter who they were, no matter what body type they were, no matter what size they were, no matter where their interest was, no matter their relevance was, all of us told them, don't do this. This is a bad idea. The first step was men saying, listen, you shouldn't do it because it's a really bad idea. Then it became, you really shouldn't do it because if you do that, we're going to do this. And men were going to make their own version. Some people threw around ideas of calling it humble. Some people threw it out as disseminate. But basically, make a male version of the app. And basically, as I talked about on the broadcast before, unironic dating sim guides. Hey, you want to crack this woman? Hey, yo, you want to be able to crack this woman who's in the top position of number 4? Here's exactly all the ways that you can seduce her. Women, of course, were angry about this. Of course, that women didn't do it. They're instead doing the leaderboard thing. But of course, men were blamed for this. Men were told, oh, you just wanted to harass women. Incels, the dusties, they hacked the database to harass women. But it was an act. It was because the founder, Sean Cook, and his social media director, Daniela Sestella, left the database public. And Sean Cook is a gay man! T was born from a deeply personal mission to give women the tools they need to date safely in a world that often overlooks their protection. Founder Sean Cook launched T after witnessing his mother's terrifying experience with online dating, not only being catfished but unknowingly engaging with men who had criminal records. Realizing that traditional dating apps do little to protect women, Sean knew something had to change. That's why he built T, the first ever dating app safely to platform women. No matter how you frame it, the truth of T and the doxing Tea Party, women wanted to gossip. And to go back to a comment that was said earlier, no, they were not making their version of 4chan. They were trying to make their normie version of Kiwi Farms. And what they ended up doing got egg on their face. Despite this, and despite the efforts of men like myself that are coming up now, where I would list this in order as it appeared and as it happened, there are in fact women that are trying to defend this, saying, no, not you proving that all men were abusive, not you proving that men are unsafe. Because as Bogdan is saying, it's L after L after L after L, and they won't fucking take the L's. So now it's men are being abusive, we need an app to talk about them, to we got exposed, incels hacked it, to not you proving that by hacking it, which it didn't happen, that men are actually unsafe. Kiss, 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 kiss. Most of us are just laughing at it. Pointing and laughing at it. Because it's funny. It's funny, and they won't stop. So they'll keep walking into a rake. Because for these groups of people, for these women, for these men that are defending it, Not the idea that women aren't allowed to have a place to be safe. But these women and these men saying that you need to teach men not to rape. Why is it that men are making fun of us? Where are all the men at? Man, why don't you come back here so that I can socially embarrass you on the internet and say that you're a creeper because you glanced at me for half a second in the gym? They are now unironically attempting to say, actually, men, it's your fault that we got ourselves exposed on the internet trying to make our normie version of Huey Farms. Sometimes a hard head making a soft ass is not enough. Sometimes you need to give them an award. A Darwin Award, chat. Because that's only the real way you're able to do something to stop it. But that would be mean and cruel. And while I can be a monster and an asshole, chat, I do not do the kind of assholish monstrosity of wishing harm upon people for the crime of fucking around and finding out stupidly. I do not believe that any woman's life should be ruined over the stupidity they did to themselves by acting petty as hell and thinking that they knew better than the common sense of the crowd. Because this is the result of the Longhouse. A contingency of women in society that have tried to rule by fiat. We know them as the HR class. A group of women that dedicate themselves to trying to scold society. That same group currently is metastasizing itself publicly in the form of collective shout, pushing to get online consumption banned because they don't like games that are sexually explicit in the nature that they have adult content and themes. Realistically, it's just the push of censorship, using the lowest common denominator to constantly hunt for a new target until eventually the entire internet has all of it restricted for places like the UK, and you're not able to talk about the fact that things are happening without potentially getting taken away by the regime. So, in the case of those who live under that regime, from the UK and such, you're not allowed to criticize the government. You're not allowed to look at porn. And while your citizenship and your women are being raped in the streets by migrants because they keep shipping infinite migrants into your country and keep telling you to take infinite migrants in your countries should you not have any, if you try to comment on any of the games, any of the violence, and any of the overhanded abuse happening from the government, you will be marked dissident, imprisoned for mean tweets and for criticizing the government while the rapes they continue and occur. Only so recently did violence now break out because of this level of censorship, where the good old boys of England decided the experiment is done. They no longer want to see what comes next. And they're now trying desperately to defend their daughters. The little boys are getting assaulted too, but it's mostly the daughters. British girls and their abuses lied about by the government and by news stories for years, labeling the migrant gang crisis as Asian gangs. But when you look at the photos, just like when they refuse to tell you the race of the person in America, it's because it's an African American. Pushes for security cameras and for body cams, blowing back on the activists begging for it and revealing, oh yeah, that guy, he unironically charged at the cop with a knife. I think the most recent one was he was dual wielding knives akimbo. Multiple times over. As relevant as it can be. People are watching this happen in real time and getting fatigued. A few months ago, there was a trend called black fatigue, where people were getting tired of African Americans that were extremely loudmouthed about political issues, to the point of calling themselves black separatists. People getting exhausted of being around them socially. the same thing's now currently happening to women as a whole. Not as a monolith, but if you're online and you like giving opinions and you don't like listening to people and you ignore evidence when it's presented to you and you don't like people giving you common sense arguments for why certain kinds of actions and outcomes are bad and you shouldn't do them, if you ignore them, you find yourself in these positions and then you get mocked by the internet because they find what's happening to you funny and you say it's because they like white supremacy and blah 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 blah. That's currently what's going on right now with the social media apps. You know, when you don't have a bread tuber complaining about how they're not getting enough money because they're not working hard enough. As that was the context of the most recent Versus chat we did on Friday. Yeah, because today is Sunday, which means yesterday was Saturday, which means that was Friday. Because I have forgotten time. Time is a construct that no longer applies to me. I'm never allowed to go to sleep when I want to, and I'm never allowed to edit when I want to. So I literally have forgotten what day it is sometimes. That, in a nutshell, is pretty much most of the topics that are happening in the current zeitgeist. So, like, going back to the thing I was just talking about, whenever somebody randomly jumps into my DMs, you know, when they're not trying to get me to give them money to take scam art that's digitally AI altered, I am exhausted with the fact that there's too much. There's too much shit to cover. And the sheer exhaustion of not wanting to deal with it, let alone not wanting to deal with that particular garbage. I don't know, man. I try to give them a happy, healthy, and hearty knock, nick, knock to them too, but can't do it, bro. I ain't got the energy. I ain't got the energy. Honestly, this summer has sucked. Like, in terms of material, content, news stories, this year is not the greatest. There are some high points and some low points, but this summer, in terms of news stories and drama and content and material, it sucks! Because it's the same 10 topics happening, but it's like, by the time one platform picks up on it, another platform's got another drama happening around it. And it's just not worth the time. It's just not worth the time. Because if it's not the heat or the boredom, it's the sheer lack of content. There we go. Now, me personally, ultimately, I know we're gonna be alright. But it would be a problem, and it would be remiss for me to not admit that some stories, such as the discovery of Leadhead as a content creator, and keeping up with such horror cows, is entertaining as hell, and will lead to me becoming very rich, very, very rich, off of covering that content. But for every good piece of material, there's like 100 stinkers. But hey, still gotta find a way to make content, you know? Still gotta find a way to make material. Gotta have something to talk about, bro. Otherwise, the choices are play video games and fry to death. It's not safe for me to go jogging outside because I might collapse of heat exhaustion. Star's trying to get caught up back at work. And Zulian gets bigger every day. Outside of all the other developments medically that apply to my mother that I cannot tell you about until they happen. As well as other things that I also can't tell you about until they happen. Mind you, there are developments that are coming down the pipeline. Many of which I've been hinting at, but it's funner if I let them happen first, and then we talk about them after they happen. Because I got a lot of good things coming down the pipeline soon. Still, it is not the greatest, chat. It is not the greatest. So, making content in the meanwhile and trying to keep myself busy is what helps me from not losing my fucking mind. So at the very least, I can hope that in the interim, while we're going through this content drought, all of you find yourself entertained with something I'm putting out. And if you happen to be amongst a group of people who believes that I could be doing more, by all means, do a pledge on Subscribestar or on Ko-Fi. And sub with the intention of requesting and asking for content. That way, if you ever feel like there's a serious content drought, you directly pay for the thing that happens. And I know, it's a very strange concept for the people who keep DMing me, saying I'm not giving them any money, but I should look into this really funny thing that will blow up and destroy my career instantly. And I should just do it simply because lol bro would be funny. If you pay to support the content, the broadcaster's more likely to do something to do it. Wow! So weird! And at the same time, why is it still fucking hot? Let me check the thermostat real quick. It is not the thermostat, it is the ambient temperature coming from my closet. In the interim, mercy. In the interim, whenever there's not something going on that people like, it has always been encouraged and expected that if you want me to cover something, hand me money and say, Single Player Carl, can you please look into X, Y, and Z? So if there's never anything on you think about, it is expected and encouraged to be a sourcer for the community. Because I will look into it and I will cover it. Ouch, that's fine. So all my laundry's done. So I'll keep covering some questions on my way out, should anybody still have any. And then I'll figure out what I'm doing with myself, because right now I'm babysitting a crock pot. What is your thoughts on deep dive review channels? Deep dive review channels are like snowflake channels. Snowflake channels are themselves interesting if the piece of content that they're covering happens to captivate your attention, because it does something that is different and talks about something that you want to hear. So for things like Down the Rabbit Hole, looking into niche content creators and or niche events and happenings, that is interesting, especially if it's something you've never heard about before, in the perpetuity of content. For me, one of the basic channels that I will always suggest for a deep dive into your YouTube history will be Dr. Rammer again. Simply because the No Turd Twice rule means that over the years there have been plenty of content creators that you need to know about and dramas that you should have seen and heard, that not just through him, but through the nexus of what was the skeptics that have now become YouTubers that are paragons in their own right, like Jim, Shieldhead, and Carl Benjamin, Sergeant McCod, and the Gator Gamer, and other channels, so on and so forth, that tell you about YouTube drama and the history behind it. That's just necessary. Because unfortunately, history is not just written by the victors, it is forgotten by the short-sighted. So, if somebody like Xander Hall didn't have someone like me that make fun of him, as there are plenty of people who do the same thing I do, which is to say, when I opened up the breadsuit going bust versus chat, with a little bit of a history lesson behind Xander Hall and his former identity Pig Puncher, within the context, exactly how dumb shit wrong he is. When on that same video, when I got into the section about Mike from PA, and how he was desperate to fuck Kira, and Kira never liked him, because he was always a pussy, and he let that humiliation make him fat, and become an unironic incel loser, hovering around women like Casey Tron, who he clearly is into, but she's not gonna fuck him either. And then the horrible, piss poor, fucking amateur porn being put out by people like Kira. And that even at the end of the day, even though she has a nice face and like a passable body, her attitude is what makes her not attractive. As well as the fact that she's just bad at what she's doing and has no skill and no talent to be enticing. Deep dives, like what I do. I don't even consider myself a deep dive channel, but if I get interested in something, I'm going down the rabbit hole, and I'm not coming up for air until I feel necessary, because I can hold my breath for a long time. Deep dive channels that will break down what you need to see and you need to hear about the people who you need to understand, and how far they go with losing themselves to what they're onto. You should watch them, if for no other reason than to know something about the history behind someone's drama. Because that content doesn't exist anywhere else, except maybe Kiwi Farms. Because as more censorship keeps coming up and going through, more and more content like that gets erased. You shouldn't be okay with that. You also shouldn't be willing to ignore things just because of who is a part of the party that's supporting it. So, men on the T-Spill, you shouldn't be ignoring men's opinions because, oh, these men are just making fun of women because blah 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 blah. Or on the Epstein list and the fact that Trump apparently is either on it or is protecting somebody who is on it because they are pressuring him. You should definitely be on top of that. You shouldn't be forgetting just because your team, my team. Because the in-group politics is how they're currently getting over. Collective Shout, for example. Banning your games. Banning your movies. Banning your media. They're doing so by using the petty and the easily distracted. All of that is bad. But people are deciding that they're just going to side with it because in the TikTok style, like what they did to No Mercy, when it's an easy, bottom of the barrel, lowest common denominator, you'll sacrifice rape play, or Alchemy Meister the God Captor, or insert hentai title here, or fucking Honey Pop. But the second that they come for something like Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, Cyberpunk 2077, even fucking Hello Kitty Island Adventure because of a fucking mod that was designed for a really hypersexualized person, like what they were making for fucking whatchamacallit, for NSO, for all the users that were super addicted to Animal Crossing New Horizons. That same shit's gonna keep happening. It's been the same story every time in perpetuity. And I'm tired of people telling me that I don't know my history. When even when I was a child, I was fully aware of the history of YouTube. And since then, I've just been vibing. Keeping the tomes, keeping the records, and telling anybody who would care to listen. I have no idea, Marcus. Let's hope. So as far as that goes, if you can find a channel that you're willing to watch that does deep dives, you should talk about them and share them around to people. Especially if the content's really good. I'm looking and I do not see any other type of question that I haven't covered yet. I think that was the only one. Did anybody else have a question they wanted to ask me before I go? I may be back later, but I won't be back immediately. Because it's too goddamn hot in this house. Carl, how do you like your steaks? Medium rare, a little bit of blood, a little bit of pink in the middle. Well seasoned. Hot spices. How was my week in general? The beginning of my week was a little bit boring, not gonna lie, because keeping up and covering the history of the failed MO for Helldivers' last major order was a little bit boring because you could watch our failure happening by the hours. And keeping notes on that was exhaustive. But to motivate myself, I chose to break it down in a way that I could probably autistically recap the information in a video. So, probably as a piece of material, but just as like a piece of content, I might pull a couple of people to do some dramatic reading of that content narrative. Simply because that was really dumb. Really, really fucking dumb. Can you join in for the ML reading? I don't know. Ask me in a week's time. Yeah, ask me in like 7 days. Because I haven't even picked out the people that I want to do it for. Because I need 2 male voices and a female voice. Gotta see if I can get Jay to play the video game. Do I defer narrative first or gameplay first in video games? Both. I am a person that likes both types. And I prefer something as a blend in the middle. Narrative first doesn't matter if I am not hooked on your story and I'm not hooked by a gameplay loop. I at very minimum need a decently hookable playstyle, such as that inside of something like Boyfriend Dungeon, and not like Lo-Fi Spirit Swap, Lo-Fi 3 beats, Lo-Fi Swap Match 3 to listen to beats to. Or something closer to the middle, which would be Merchants of Rosewall. If there's a narrative around the video game, I need to be able to engage in that narrative through my actions and gameplay. If the gameplay comes first and the narrative is secondary, the gameplay loop needs to be fast and quick, that it can get you back into the content. Unfortunately, depending on how that appears, most games tend not to use that design nowadays. And there's a single reason why. One word: roguelike. Whether it's roguelike or roguelite, video games prefer having simple narratives that are tied together with repeatable gameplay content. One of those examples was a video game that I did a review for, as a part of the Dare Drop campaign that I signed up for, which was Section 13. That review is currently on the channel in the form of video. I would suggest watching it. Gameplay like that, I can tolerate. The reason I can tolerate it is because the voice acting gives you a little bit of levity and breath in the middle of the content. Because the majority of that game is lore. the voice acting, the pieces of the content and lore that's given to you as you unlock it through a run, the mild references and the material that is involved in the gameplay loop, the way that the characters are meant to interact with each other, that is necessary. The other side of that would be somewhere on the other end where gameplay comes first and narrative second, which would be Wizard of Legend. Wizard of Legend and Wizard of Legend 2 have decided to go the direction of Hades, to be a Hades-like when it comes to roguelikes and roguelites, where the narrative is less about your gameplay decisions than leading you in the direction of becoming a proper Wizard of Legend, but instead, over the course of all of your runs, whether they be successes or failures, that you start learning content about the backstory and the lore of the world that you're involved inside of. And then, of course, games that meet you in the middle, those video games happen to be something like Kenshi, Soul Ash, Soul Ash 2, and Path of Exile 2, but more specifically for the ones that I'll use in this example, Darkest Dungeon and Darkest Dungeon 2. When you combine all of your elements and your lore, and knowledge about the lore becomes important for gameplay progression, so you're making people pay attention, but you're also not punishing them for getting an explicitly important detail correct and right, as would a JRPG. You open up the ability for people to give a shit more than they already obviously would. Another comparative example that does that when it comes to narrative and gameplay looping is actually The Binding of Isaac, all the way up to Repentance. That's a lot of content, that's a lot of hours of gameplay. Condensing that into a live stream run that could be condensed within 7 hours of supercuts, that's a lot of time to learn about a video game and its many gameplay synergies. But yet, that would be very, very fucking good. Everyone should play them at least once, in my opinion. But the genre is not for everybody. If ARPGs are not necessarily can be for anybody but not for everybody, roguelikes and roguelites are not for everybody either. Because some people prefer having something a little bit deeper. Because unfortunately, it's just how it is. If I had a chance to make a game, what would my game be about? I've already made that game. Technically, I already had a hand in making that game. It's called Five Nights at Fuckboys, parts 1 through 3. Including the special editions. I was in part a writer and a playtester for it. So, secret. On the Keeping Space video that came out for the Game Awards, where I praised Balatro and used voice narration, including my own voice in AI voices, specifically from the company Ivona, which is the same voices that we use to narrate the content behind Five Nights at Fuckboys. I and a bunch of other people during the time where it was relevant to have Skype were a part of the group that Saber Sugar put together to make those video games. I helped program that game, I helped playtest that game in its hardest difficulty fights. You're welcome. I made sure it was hard. And I helped with the level of humor that those characters have become known for. And all I wanted was just the ability to play the game as it was coming out. That was it. So if there was a game that I'd make, specifically, it'd be that. Satirist humor, but with some level of emotional vacuity. Besides that, if I had to make it myself originally, completely, entirely, I don't know where to start from, but I'm pretty sure it'd probably be an ARPG. Because for me, Diablo is like the baseline of all my gameplay experience. I spent a lot of my youth playing Diablo 1 and Hellfire. It's the only thing that I have in common with my father. He played a lot of video games. His particular poison was Heroes of Might and Magic. He had a lot of money doing it, because he was very bored when he was working on his ship as a naval soldier. While cheating on another. The only other thing that kept him was playing computer games by himself, because he didn't have a lot of friends, because he was fucking his friends. When Gabe Spy came, who's really excited to play with online people. Sometimes I catch myself looking in the mirror, and I have, in fact, the do I look like him moment. And then I'm like, bitch, I got hair. Of course I don't look like him. And then I go play fucking DST. Although, more than likely, if I had to choose between Diablo and DST, the video game I'd probably make look something closer to DST. But I'd make it simpler. Something that horror would have easier time playing. You know? I am by nature a social person. And I am by nature a social gamer. So I'd probably make something that is social, that get people involved. Somewhere between Don't Starve Together and a theme park-like experience like that of OSRS and Toontown Online Rewritten. Or MapleStory. But even simpler. And also, I've read all that. I agree, Marcus. It do be like that. It do be like that. Everybody wants to make a fucking Hades-like because everybody wants to be like this. In fact, there is a roguelike I actually picked up that is exactly like that. And it is called Rainbreaker. It is trying to be a punk rock video game. In fact, I see that you have it on your playlist. This thing is what, $20? No, $10. It's a $10 video game. And yet this video game tries to do exactly Hades, but it at least does it in a different way. It was made by Studio Fizbin, and it was published by Thunderful Publishing. It actually had a campaign inside of Dare Drop. But I think at the time, currently my standing, to do Twitch dares was not high enough to take the dare to do it. Otherwise I would have. Same way it wasn't for Wizards of Legend 2. And then that one was awarded to me by a member of the audience donating it to me. Currently, right now, there's a handful of these that are currently up. One of which is one of the video games that was featured during Summer Games Fest, which is Hellclock. It's currently out inside of Steam Early Access. It requires 10 Twitch CCV, and just like Rainbreaker, it tries to give you that Hades-like gameplay loop. And I feel like it's piss poor. Mainly because it feels like it feels unfinished. That's the first problem. The second problem is that it has a lot of concepts, but it doesn't hone down on it. So it needs to be refined somewhat. Kind of like how they did for Raven's Watch. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you end up making a bunch of fucking shoot 'em ups, and you end up making a bunch of slash 'em and beat 'em ups, and people will think, you know, we're one step removed from fucking madness. All the various video games and flash games that exist of madness that achieve that same feature. And it feels like the more we do to try and push it forward, the more we feel like we just go back to the days of Newgrounds. Or honestly, we probably had a better experience playing free games on Newgrounds than we would paying video games out of this marketplace. Just saying. At the end of the day, it is what it is. Any more questions? Any more questions? Diablo 1 is aged gameplay-wise, but atmosphere is impeccable, but no one forgets the first time that they entered church, where the only thing that emulates this is as close as recreating his failing is Path of Exile. I agree with you, Bogdan. It is. Now, mind you, I think that Path of Exile 1 asks a little bit too much of an incoming player base, simply because it terrifies the shit out of them. Which is why grinding your games made Path of Exile 2 to be simpler, and to bring more people in sooner and closer. And yet it still somewhat achieves the same problem. Borderlands kind of does the same thing. You never forget where you were the first time you played Borderlands 1. And you never forget your first playthrough of Borderlands 2. However, over the time, Borderlands 3 and eventually when it comes out, Borderlands 4 is going to go to the way of the dodo because we won't be able to recapture it because that particular nest egg and that time capsule of that era of where Reddit wasn't as annoying as Reddit has now become it's a distant memory in the minds of most of us. The amount of people who are so cooked because their framework of gameplay relevance is piss poor jokes that have already gone the way of Big Chungus. It doesn't increase a community. It only increases a player base. Because there is no real community anymore. Shouldn't it be a good thing about Exile 1? I feel like a lot of people would respect veteran players more. It's good for veteran players because we use it as an onboarding mechanism to bring new players from Path of Exile 2 into Exile 1. Because Exile 2 was designed to simplify concepts that are out of the fucking crazy wing-wang in Exile 1. There are two different video games that have the same philosophy of concept, but ultimately economy is different, gameplay strength is different, gameplay power is different, access to power is different. In Exile 1, you have a lot more control over what you can do with your items. In Exile 2, you do not have any control over your items. You only have a little bit, if anything, and you still have to work to farm for it to get it. But you have a lot more player agency in how you decide to make your builds. It's very possible that you could be doing a solo self-found run of a character and come up with something that probably has been innovated by other people, but when you discover it for the first time, doing it in isolation, it's not like when somebody spoiled you and told you, oh, you need to play this build in order to actually have viability. Because you have a lot more fun that way. Whereas in Exile 1, they didn't call it Path of Spreadsheets for nothing, baby. They didn't call it Path of Spreadsheets for nothing. I know some have said that people should start on Ruthless, flat out saying the base game is watered down and bad. I wouldn't know what it's like to have the game, but I haven't tried Ruthless yet. Let me tell you right now, do not play Ruthless unless you already understand the base mechanics of Exile 1. All of the features that are designed to help a new player are not in Ruthless. Gems are drop only. More effort, more work. Using the Atlas is no longer guaranteeing a baseline of content. It is actually enabling it to appear at all, at the same rates that the standardization of the highest tier of efficiency for the Atlas would appear as. In other words, it was intended to be drop scarcity, or going bone dry on drop chances. If someone told a player to play that mode blind, they were trying to make them hate the game on purpose. And you should tell everybody who that person was, so we can beat them up. That is evil. That's evil. I wouldn't even do that as a joke. Funnily enough, I'm playing Borderlands 3 again, but I turned the dialogue down to 0. I mean, that's kind of my point, don't you think, Crusher? Like, Borderlands 1 through Borderlands 3 are okay games. However, the grind process that was added to Borderlands 2 for the overpowered system was dumb. And the super bosses that were supposed to be hidden in the back of the game were not balanced around single-player combat. Some, like Pyro Pete, need to specifically be defeated by abusing a bug or a glitch or a damage overflow scale with characters like Krieg in order to farm them for content and loot that would then make it possible for you to then fight the other super bosses. In Borderlands 3, you can pretty much fight anything and do anything solo, but the fun of the game is supposed to be playing with groups, but you don't have that fun. So it's like, what's the point? Am I playing it for the lore? I guess. But is it gonna matter? The story is cooked to shit. By the time you get to Borderlands 4, do any of the characters Borderlands 3 even matter? As is series tradition, they will probably be mentioned by name, but in totality, who cares? Where's the hype? Where's the conversation? That's ignoring the fact that Borderlands 2 is basically data scraping you to try and get information out of your account. Even though I'm pretty sure the game is still like on what, an 85% drop sale? I'm gonna check. Yes, it is. Until August 4th. It's on 90% off. $5.99. $16.99 if you want all of the additional content in the Super Deluxe Edition. And ironically enough, if you bought the Pandora's Collection, for all the content that is inside of the Pandora's box, which would be everything, I guess. Yeah. So, Borderlands Game of the Year Edition, Game of the Year Edition Enhanced, probably because they took Borderlands Game of the Year off. Yeah, it did. Borderlands Game of the Year was unlisted from the Steam store, but at the same time, Borderlands Game of the Year Enhanced replaced it. All of the DLC of Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, and all of the DLC and all of the Mercenary Day packs that were added, including the Krieg pack, Borderlands pre-sequel, and all of its content and challenge map content, Borderlands 3, and the 2 season passes, as well as all of its content, and its designers and directors cut shit, as well as the skins, Tales from the Borderlands, new Tales from the Borderlands, the Borderlands pre-sequel season pass, Borderlands 2 season pass, and the Vault Hunters cosmetic mega pack, which is just fucking priced at $30 for no reason. A purchasing bundle that in totality would be $158 is being sold for $15.64. In terms of a budget, and comparing this against things like The Division 2 and Warframe and Destiny 2, it's probably more efficient of money and time. You'll at least get an experience out of it. Unlike all those other games, where you're going to be asked to be nickel and dime, and all of your gear will be considered irrelevant. Because in that game state, since the game is considered to have a shelf life, they need you to constantly be playing forever, because the game is a live service. Whereas Borderlands 3 is not a live service. Like, it's online, but you can play through peer-to-peer, and you can play the single-player game, and there's no expectation for you to have to compete against other people. But you know, this game, that game. At the very least, I think it's a waste of your money to buy it, if you're not really interested in playing it. Spend your money on something else. Buy the Thief Trilogy on sale. Again, Thief 4 does not exist and it can't hurt you. Buy the original 3 games. You can get them all for under $5. Good. Alright, Cassie. I agree with you. People are just going to buy Borderlands 4 just cuz. They're going to buy it just cuz. They're not going to buy it because they're deeply interested in the story. They're going to buy it just cuz. And Lord forbid if these people choose to buy that shit on the goddamn Switch too! Oh! That's a good question, Extra Crusher. And the answer is they don't have a story. There's supposed to be a story. Allegedly. But what Randy tried to sell the game on was guns. And gun types. And the fact that you could put guns together featuring parts from different people. So you can put together a gun that has Maliwan parts, Atlas parts, Hyperion parts, and so on and so on and so on. What are my thoughts about gacha games? I'm a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to gacha games. I am a person who put money into and played with some level of seriousness Shin Megami Tensei Devil Downloader Liberation, because I am a fan of SMT. And not just SMT, but all of the parts of SMT that have never been properly put together, including the project that I worked on, which was Reimagine, which we had to shut down. When it comes to gacha games, I believe that a game should be capable of being played without having to cater to whales. For me, D2 does in fact do that. It is possible to join a casual clan, farm up your demons, farm your feet. That will make more sense if I explain what I mean by farm up your feet. But you play the campaign, play the base mission campaign, you play all the extended expansion content that was added over the 3, 4, 5 so far odd years of it still going that were added. And then maybe every once in a while you drop $20 on the game alongside all of the gems that you'll saved up from the free-to-play process. And you roll some banners. That's what most gacha games really should be. A fun experience for you to get involved into. To use a better comparison, instead of using SMT or anything like what's currently out there, people are crazy about, which would be One Ring Waves and Xenozone Zero and Genshin Impact, I'm instead going to use Pokemon Go. You remember during COVID when people would get up in the middle of the night with 4 to 7 power banks to a person, usually in a carry-on backpack, and they would go walk around public at all of the public gyms, at these walkabouts, park paths, public amphitheaters, public amphitheater outings, bookstores, malls. And there was a time period where you could not escape Pokemon Go, even before Pokemon Go to the polls became a meme. Do you remember? Do you remember when you went to the gym, when you got your first Charizard and your Pikachu? Do you remember sweating in the heat while you were running down on the street? Ooh, do you remember? 'Cause I do. Those are some of my fondest memories that I will still have with my friend before he died. I remember the camaraderie amongst my college friends and other college members in class. I remember us over fucking candid when that fucking Whisper app that existed long before T ever did existed, and Yik Yak, which on my keychain I still have a bottle cap opener that they gave us when I was in college. I remember the fun and the camaraderie. Hell, even for something like Guild Wars 2, which, piss poor game, it's now a free-to-play game. You shouldn't buy it. It's not worth getting into. But for even a game like Guild Wars 2, for the baseline, as well as the then expansion 1 and expansion 2 that were being pushed to the audience, there was fun to be had with doing the fractals and doing the jump puzzles across the world and exploring all the nodes, getting your first piece and completing full map exploration so you could then start working on your first legendary. There is an experience, a camaraderie, real community in doing that, both amongst the group and amongst people who you met. That does not exist with the video games currently out there with the Gacha Sphere. We are all coke-addled fucking junkies, rolling banners, hoping to get a +1 percentage to become better. And actually, it don't even fucking matter, because then the game would get closed in 6 months. Or at least for the games that it mattered for. So, for Kingdom Hearts, for example, Kingdom Hearts 3. Any of you that ever played Kingdom Hearts Kai Crossroad, Dark Road, whatever the fuck they call that last expansion, for all of the years that it was running, and for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, when you saw Kingdom Hearts 2.8 and 0.83, A Fragmentary Passage, and you're looking at the movie of back cover, and you're like, who the fuck are these people? That nature of being out of the loop was what, for someone starting out when it was released specifically for Japan, and then it was brought over on iOS for America, an entire experience that I and all my friends played through in high school and college. Specifically, starting out with things like, specifically Genshin Impact, and then moving from that into something else entirely. Like, for Adult Swim games, it was playing things like Super Monsters Ate My Condo. Then it became things like Pokemon Go and D2X, or DX2, or rather it's pronounced D2SA. Then it became Zenless Zone Zero and Honkai Star Rail, and so on and so on and so on. Eventually, you ended up in a loop where I think the one people more commonly are aware of is the Limbus Company. Limbus Company and all the other ones as well that are basically an addition of Hoyoverse and the versions of it that exist for gameplay loops such as MapleStory and Dungeon Fighter Online. All of those games have loops that in and of themselves, in perpetuity, effectively put you on a nickel and dime track where you are in fact a fucking junkie. Warframe wasn't always like that. Back in the olden times, Elsword is a good example. Yes, 100%. Survival Project, which is an even older game, is like that. Depending on how you look at the cash shop and how it was implemented in Flight. Flight for Fun is a good example of that, but that's a Korean MMO grinder. So I guess you could say that's by design. For all of these games that were designed like this, they were designed to make you nickel and dime yourself and have to pay it. Because that's how you were supposed to get power. I remember that for Elsword, you needed to pay a lot of money to actually make sure that your gear didn't break. So that you could actually have viable tools and gear to actually play at that level of power. Where if you had a +8 kit within the first few dungeons as a mage knight, and you actually knew how to fight using your fire seals, you were a really good player for Guns the Duel. But at least buying things in the cash shop for that for IJGI was not comparative to doing it in something like Gunbound, which I guess were like the first microtransaction games that really were nickel and diming the shit out of people's kids, alongside MapleStory and Audition. But I digress, and I'm back to my point. Gacha games were supposed to offer you something. Seasonal content that kept you interested in the brand. So, for me, for Devil Downloader, my viewpoint started from a very simple position. So, for me, D2 started out as a game. And over time, there were various levels of collaborations, especially added within the first season, the intermission, and the second season. You had Bayonetta collabs, Devil May Cry collabs, Ghost in the Shell collabs, Berserk collabs, Sonic the Hedgehog of all fucking expectation collabs. Because it's a game that's made by Sega Atlas. And even Seven Deadly Sins. And every time that there'd be a new release, hey guys, you gotta get a Melodious 7-star badge. If you don't get a Melodious Assault Mode 7-star badge, that you get sorted out with gear that comes from some fusions from Skull Knight, from the Berserk collab, and the Ghost in the Shell collab that was for SOG 2, and you don't fuse that with the Jean Star plus Teal and the Beloved and Dante plus Nero plus Vi with the best changes you can make, you're behind the curve, bro. Because everything started becoming the obvious power sink that it was going to become. It was a sadness. A deep, integral sadness. And then, of course, that's to say nothing of the normal banners that already existed. So, when Extra Crusher says, better pay those ice burners or your plus 50 legendary cannon for your build will be gone, you better go into the shop and you better buy what you need from the summoning portal. You better use your summon files to unlock your ultimates. You better use your superiors to get your level 1 through 3 star fodder, to make your 4 and 5 star fodder, to get your then level 5 potential summoning file, an ultimate guaranteed file, an absolute summoning file. You better be running the events and getting your files to get the special version of the Berserk summon, and the Evangelion summon, and the Overlord summon, and the Puella Magic Madoko summon, which we didn't even get in the American version, and the Ghost in the Cell summon. You better make sure that you're staying stacked up on them, and you're being stacked up on your gems too, and your parchments. Oh Lord, your parchments. You better be making sure that you're staying on top of those, because if you're not staying on top of those, you're not going to get the special demons. And those special demons that you're missing out on, you're going to get fucked in the ass. Because you're going to show up, and you're not going to have the counter to counter the strongest demons in the game that are busted and broken and shake because they were designed for the whales. That never-ending trap. I honestly would rather go back to paid Maple Story. Even though reset servers exist, reboot servers they call them, and it's progression, so you're grinding the way that a person would inside of OSRS, even if you're doing it on a private server. The game of playing catch-up, where you don't log in for a while, and you could have been the peak of power, and now you're behind the curve. It's the exact same experience inside of fucking WoW. So why do that? Why do that to yourself? Just play a different game. Save your money. Save your money. If there's no other reason why I would probably push for people to play PoE 1 and 2 so goddamn much, if not because you need to experience the lore that is characters like the Sassmaster. If I give them $100 inside of PoE, if I give Grinding Your Games $100, I get $100 worth of microtransactions that then allow me to optimize the quality of life of my account and my multiple stash tabs full of projects. And I get to play for however long I want, whenever I want. And rather than feeling like I'm getting nothing for my money, I'm getting something that I will always be able to keep for my money. Because when I give them my money, I'm not paying a license for the privilege of a game that will eventually disappear, and then it's wasted dollars down the sink later on. I'm not even actively playing the game right now. But I at least have my save data set up in such a way that if I were to return to the game before it closes, I could then pick back up. And then I have to do all that work to potentially have a chance to get back to that upper echelon, where I've already been left behind by all the whales that have spent thousands of dollars. Now, take that framework, take that argument that I just said right now, put that on to the Last Descendant. Here's your sign. Here's your sign. That's the ultimate problem with Warframe, and Zenless Zone Zero, and Wuthering Waves, and Genshin Impact, and especially the First Descendant. It is possible to play those games and spend no money. It is even possible to do it right. And I would say, despite the fact that it's Nexon, somehow, in their infinite wisdom, probably because of all those years of militarizing and milking the shit out of fucking Mabe no Gai, they have found a way to make the First Descendant at least more viable than Warframe. Because it's a time system. If you're playing that game actively, you will always have the materials you need. And you feel like you're getting progression. They frequently add more characters. They add more things to the shop. You are the one that decides the content that you play. If you want to play Sharon, and you want to go farm and do the shutdown missions, and try to do that alongside other Sharons in the area that are farming, you can do that for 12 hours. Have at it. Be blessed, beloved. And unlike OSRS, where you have to pay for membership, and then, even if you're able to keep up the gold cost of your bonds, you still have the consequence of getting shit on by crusty, dusty, goddamn hard-stuck bastards that will take you for your bank, then harass you about it in the wilderness. You at the very least don't get to do it for free. So then, when you put all those factors together, naturally you're going to flow towards games that are not going to disappear randomly, or have a potential to disappear when it is no longer viable to run as a service. Because that is basically the entire eggshell of stop killing games. Gacha games themselves are probably the best example of what you're supposed to get when you're talking about what you get for viability for stop killing games. Because they are by nature a live service. Granted, the snapshots of how the games function, they function as a gameplay environment where you and everybody else are interacting, but you're not directly competing against each other except in places where you are. Such as PvP arenas, where you can clearly see the scale of power compared to everybody else who's a whale and who's not a whale. Even if you were really lucky and you were smart and you put together a really good build, you pale in comparison to the guy that spent $10,000. Not to mention the overhaul systems, that's correct. Not to mention the invalidation of your gear and making you start all the way over again, because hey, everybody has to get new content. Item level 200, you better farm up and get the item level 500. Item level 500, better farm up to get the 1000, better farm up to get the 2000, get farm up to get the 10k, farm up to get the 20k. It's a rat race wheel. It is a rat race wheel that keeps you stuck in a Pavlovian loop that feeds your desire for a new edge of power creep that does not give you satisfaction based on the baseline of what the game originally was when it was first released. And for that, I look for examples such as JRPGs that have mastered this during the time of the DS. Specifically, SMT Strange Journey. Strange Journey plays more like a gacha than it does like an SMT title, despite the fact that it's a really good one. Especially when they were able to feature it with the Demonica later inside of D2. In fact, a take that I once gave, that I've been criticized for, is that at the current time period that it matters in, Persona and SMT play more like gacha games than they do like normal stat block grinding ARPGs and JRPGs. And the reason I say that is because it's the same thing at the end of the day. Because when we're talking about power being gated behind potential, and when I look at what I'm looking at, and we make our argument about the fusion table, and we have to make an entire GitHub link for each of them, where's the fusion list? Where's the fusion list? Ooh, they even updated it for the 7th anniversary. Go us. Where's the fusion calculator? Here it is. I can't do the entire thing as a whole. But let me just use a good example of a character that can be reverse fusion that isn't a pickup that you have to earn the hard way, like with Stemma. Settings in English, downgrade fusion, prevent unload, skill, fatal sword, normal fusions, 4-to-1s, 1-to-3s. So, when I have a table, and you tell me that my SMT3 fusion table looks like this, and this is the console game to which it works for the HD edition, and it is compared to the same fusion table that I have to put together to create a 5-star demon that has a powerful use inside of the gacha game. And mind you, this is it trying to simplify the page for you. Because these lines account for all of the fusion material underneath it. So this half right here and this half right here compared to an entire half over here and an entire half over here. So if we simplify it, it'll probably look something more like that. Whereas if I go from just 1 stars, it looks like that. If this, unironically, is how the board looks for a person to get into the game, and it's like, yeah, bro, I would like to get the same demon you got. You whooped my ass inside of it, and I was able to fight your demon on offense and defense and PvP, and I could win. How do I build that team? And it's like, bro, it's simple. All you gotta do is use all 1,100 of these demon fodders so you can get the right one. And then, once you've done that fusion fodder, once you've gotten that demon, bro, you gotta make sure you get the specifically busted, broken one with the actual skills that give you the ability to be prepared to fight against them. So you can't get a psychic, you can't get an uncommon, you can't get an origami, you can't have a protector. You specifically need to start from an elementalist base, then fuse over the elements of protector so that you can actually be prepared for the setup. Nigga, who's playing this game? Who's playing the game, bro? Who? Who? That's not how games are meant to be played! At some level, especially if you're an SMT fan, if you're a fan of Atlas games, if you're a fan of Megaten, you begin to realize, oh, that's why they made Persona. Yeah, that's why they put in social links. You're right. You know what? Valid. Because at the end of the day, it was a much simpler system than something like fucking Devil Survivor. But we're never going to get a Devil Survivor clone. I don't think we're ever going to get a version of Devil Survivor that'll be playable for the PC. It's going to be forever stuck to the 3DS and the DS. So unless you emulate them, you can't play them and experience them. As you should. That's why there's an over-sensationalization of Persona 5. And hell, mind you, chat, just to add insult to injury, there is a Persona gacha game on the market right now. Where is my Steam helper? There it is. There's one of these on the market right now. Right now. It's out right now. It's called Persona 5 The Phantom X. Like, unironically, why are we doing this to ourselves? I understand the idea of wanting to make money, but maybe release it as a standalone video game. Because why would I do this damage to myself multiple times over just because it's the hottest thing on the market? And what's sad is that this thing fucking lies to you and says it's just like Expedition 33 and Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD Remaster. They tell you that goddamn lie, chat! They tell you that lie, and people believe them! So, if I had to, I would always tell someone to play Path of Exile 1, play Path of Exile 2. Before I'm going to tell them to waste $100, $300, $1,000, $2,000 of disposable income on a video game that promises you nothing but dopamine. If you want dopamine, play a video game that gives you dopamine without having to pay $300 to experience the true video game. Oh, it's possible to spend no dollars in these types of games and enjoy them. But ultimately, as content creators, we know the reason why people do it. It's because they want to be able to say, I got X or Y, I was able to pull X card, I was able to pull X thing. Because if you don't have all the content available, and you don't do all the content available, and you don't consume all the content available, then you're not really playing the game now, are you? It's FOMO. It's FOMO. It's turtles all the way down. It's the same reason why MOBAs are going the way of the dodo. It's the same reason why battle royales are going the way of the dodo. Return to playing single-player games and multiplayer games with your friends that you host together on a server. You are unironically going to have more fun playing Don't Starve Together with friends than you will playing gacha games by yourself. It's better for your wallet. It's better for your money. Any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Boom, 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 boom. I don't think I see any. So, unless somebody has another question that they want to ask me before I dip, I'm going to use that moment to dip. Then I'm going to see if I can eat something. And then I'm going to return. Because now that I have the controller, I need to break the controller in. It's more than likely if I don't return playing Expedition 33, I'll probably be playing a little bit more of Worship. I do know that there is a multiplayer branch for playing lobby codes with other players inside of Worship, but on the stable branch it's not accessible. So if you also have Worship and you want to play it with me, you're going to need to tell me, so we have to use the beta branch to do it. Otherwise, I will take this moment to do the do. All of my clothes from the other boxes now fit inside of that core container, so I'm happy. I gotta rotate through my clothes and get through the rest of the shit that's in that back one in the corner. And then Bob's your uncle. So, I have yapped my yappers. I need to go drink the coffee that I bought the other day that I never fucking drank when I got home. I just drank the fucking Sprites. And I'll see what kind of trouble I can get into later. And I will see you all. Same Carl time, same Carl channel. I will see you when I see you. I will be billing you all for my therapy. Please do all the algorithmically promotional things for the live stream. Please like, comment, shares, blah, blah, blah. Go check out the TikToks, both on TikTok directly and on YouTube, as well as on X. And stay tuned. And stay posted for the next episode. Bye. Why is it so hot in Georgia?